Could your life be driven by fear or ambition? Have you ever felt like you're constantly chasing success, avoiding failure, clinging to praise, or fearing rejection? Welcome to Stoic Dhamma, where we walk slowly through timeless questions through stillness, insight, and the wisdom that endures. Today, we explore a profound mystery, the mindset of those who no longer seem to return, not in body, not in karma, not in identity. What does it truly mean to live as if rebirth is no longer needed? Look around you in this modern world: endless notifications, emotional headlines, constant opinions pulling you in every direction. We are perpetually stimulated, perpetually reacting. In this overwhelming swirl of instant responses, how often do you truly act from a place of stillness? On the contrary, it is about mastery of mind, learning to navigate the world without being ruled by its fleeting whims and pressures. In this video, we will walk through daily life, delve into history, explore powerful symbols, and uncover spiritual insights to meet the ones who live truly free. They are free not because they ran away from the world, but because they learned not to be enslaved by its demands, its fears, or its fleeting joys. They found an inner liberation that transcends external circumstances. How often do you pause, take a breath, and reflect, instead of reacting impulsively to every external trigger? What if the path to true freedom lies not in what you gain or avoid, but in how you choose to perceive and engage with life itself? Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, once wrote, "Know where you can go is more peaceful than your own soul." And Epictetus, the former slave who became a profound teacher, reminded us, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgment of them. These ancient insights are more relevant than ever in our hyper-connected age. This journey is not about withdrawing from life or escaping its responsibilities, and maybe, just maybe, as we explore this profound way of being, you'll begin to wonder, what if you could live that way too? Imagine this: someone mocks you at work, says something careless at your expense. You feel the sting, but you do not react. You do not raise your voice, seek revenge, or even defend yourself. Social media algorithms reward outrage. Office politics reward self-promotion. Even at home, we often speak not to connect, but to control. And yet, there are those who move through the same world differently. They do not seem pressed by the need to respond, to prove, or to correct. They walk through noise without becoming it. They remain intact. It is to stop being a puppet pulled by invisible strings of fear, of desire, of habit. A curse is on the lips, but instead, the person exhales, smiles, says nothing, continues driving. That moment of non-reaction is not small, and elsewhere, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. What Marcus practiced was not spiritual detachment in the abstract. He practiced ruling his own thoughts while ruling an empire. Each time you say, "This is not up to me," I release it, you are practicing liberation. In other words, first anchor yourself in stillness, then move. Don't move to escape silence, move from silence. Each moment offers the same invitation. Will you act from freedom or from fear? Will you respond from awareness or from conditioning? They let joy arise without needing to hold it. They speak only when their words come from clarity, not compulsion. They are, in every way, still fully alive but not bound by life. Who appear content in all weather, who disturb no one and are disturbed by nothing. They do not wait for heaven. They do not cling to now. They walk with nothing to prove. This is the heart of the liberated life, doing without clinging, loving without grasping, acting without needing to control the outcome. Each time you choose stillness over reaction, reflection over habit, clarity over chaos, you step off the wheel. It means to move through it as one who is no longer seeking completion from it. You eat when hungry, you rest when tired, you help when moved, you speak when necessary. And when the moment ends, you let it go. A king who first governed himself. It is a rupture in the cycle, a moment where samsara does not continue. Not because the world has changed, but because you are no longer spinning with it. It is to pause before responding, to examine one's own mind, to ask, am I choosing this, or am I merely reacting? You breathe, you smile softly, and you return to your task. Not out of weakness or avoidance, but because you have seen through the illusion of offense. They don't argue to win or speak to be heard. They listen more than they speak. They work without ego. They rest without guilt. And they love without possession. Their freedom is not in what they do, it's in how they do it. In Hinduism, this is moksha, the liberation of the soul from the wheel of samsara. She does not force the flower to bloom faster. She simply does her part and accepts the unfolding. This is Stoic action. This is karma yoga. This is the dharma of those who have ceased to fight the present moment. But what does this look like not in myth or scripture, but in the ordinary life of a person who goes to work, cooks meals, speaks with others, and yet is no longer tangled in the world? The insult touches only your name, not your being. This simple act, this quiet strength, is the beginning of liberation? Epictetus said, "You are not disturbed by things, but by your opinion of them." The one who no longer reacts automatically has stepped outside the wheel. They still live, feel, and choose, but their mind is not enslaved by impulse. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, but it is profoundly free. Many of us are trained to believe that we must react to praise, to blame, to discomfort, to pleasure. The world seems to demand it. In Buddhism, such a person is said to have reached the end of karma, the end of the cycle of cause and effect that pulls us from one life into the next. In Stoic philosophy, freedom is not about owning nothing or leaving society. It is about no longer being ruled by what is outside you. To live like this is not to be passive, it is to be awake. Let us return to a familiar image. Someone is driving in traffic. A car cuts them off, the heart rate spikes. The hand reaches for the horn. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor, once reminded himself, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. The daily life of the liberated is not flashy. It is deeply quiet. You may not notice them in a crowd. They don't preach or seek attention. Consider the example of a gardener. She plants, waters, tends, and lets go. She cannot control the rain or the sun. Freedom, in this way, is not a place to arrive at. It is a relationship with the now. There is a Sanskrit phrase from the Bhagavad Gita, Yogasa Kuru Karmani, established in yoga, perform action, and this is not reserved for saints. It is possible in a kitchen, in a meeting, in a crowded train. A person who has stopped reacting has not stopped feeling, but they have stopped being ruled by feelings. They allow sadness to pass through like rain. To live as if you will not be reborn does not mean to withdraw from the world. This is the secret of the quiet ones, the ones who seem light even in heavy places. Perhaps, in such a life, the cycle of return truly ends. In a quiet grove beneath the shade of a Bodhi tree, a man sat unmoving for days. The world around him pulsed with the noise of villages and kingdoms, births and deaths, but within him stillness. This was Siddhartha Gautama, later known as the Buddha. The stories say that when he stood again, he was no longer bound to this cycle of becoming. He did not escape the world, he walked through it with a new mind. What followed was not retreat, but a life of teaching, compassion, and relentless clarity. He would say, "The world is not outside you." One scientist recorded in his notes, "No physiological signs of distress." He smiled constantly. Pain seemed irrelevant. They did not understand it. How could a man so physically frail remain so mentally at peace? There is no world apart from the mind, to ask who am I? But more often, they sweep floors, write letters, tend gardens, endure illness, sit with sorrow without becoming any of it. They simply live as if the wheel has stopped turning, as if karma no longer has momentum, as if nothing more needs to be added to the self, and nothing needs to be defended. Their greatness is not in miracles, it is in their refusal to be disturbed. It's in their ordinary acts done with extraordinary equanimity. If liberation is not in rituals, or status, or beliefs, then where does it live? As if they would never return. They leave behind no formula, only a silence that calls you inward. Not rhetorically, but as an inward flame was his only instruction. For him, the end of rebirth did not mean vanishing into some abstract bliss. It meant no longer mistaking the self for thought, or time, or emotion. Buddha's insight was startlingly direct. Suffering arises from craving, and when craving ceases, so does the compulsion to return, to react, to grasp, to be reborn into another moment of attachment. But his teaching was not only Eastern in spirit. Across the world, in a palace not made of leaves but of marble, another man wrote by lamplight. He had no wealth, no citizenship, no fame, and yet his teachings shaped the hearts of generals, emperors, and scholars for centuries. In every event, he would ask, "Is this up to me? If not, release it. If yes, act with integrity." In his classroom, he trained young minds not to react, but to observe, and then to choose. That space between event and response, that gap, is where true liberation lives. He taught that suffering is not what happens to you, but how you meet what happens. Not to dominate, not to escape, but to be free from reactivity. To see the world clearly, and to meet it without illusion. Whether called enlightenment, apatheia, or moksha, this condition shares a single flavor: stillness. No man is free, he said, who is not master of himself. His name was Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, and in his private journal, he asked himself, night after night, why should you be disturbed by what is not yours to control? Marcus lived in the heart of empire. He commanded armies, judged disputes, faced plagues and betrayals. Yet he returned always to a single, Stoic principle: the mind must remain sovereign. Their lives could not be more different, yet their liberation sounds the same. One sat still beneath a tree, one led a war-torn empire. Both met suffering with the same refusal to be ruled by it. In his meditations, he writes, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." And in another line, "If you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them." Like the Buddha, Marcus saw freedom not as escape from the world, but as escape from reaction to the world. The two men, separated by continent and culture, share something rare: the discipline to remain unshaken by fortune. Not all sages left scrolls behind. In South India, in the hills of Arunachala, a boy once lay down in a dark room and pretended to die. He was 16. In his imagination, he let the body grow cold, the breath stop, the pulse fade. But something did not die, awareness remained. When he stood again, the question burned in him, "Who am I, really?" That boy became Ramana Maharshi, one of the most revered sages of the 20th century. He spoke little, taught no formal philosophy. But people from around the world came to sit in silence near him. And in that silence, many found a stillness in themselves. Ramana did not preach renunciation, he simply rested in a state of pure witnessing. Even scientists noticed. In 1946, a team of Western researchers visited him in Tiruvannamalai. He was ill, his body in pain, yet his presence was serene, untouched. But this state was not exclusive to saints. Epictetus, born a slave in the Roman Empire, lived with a permanently crippled leg. His Stoicism was not passive endurance, it was radical responsibility. In ancient texts and quiet caves, on battlefields and monastic paths, these figures carried the same inner fire. We often expect the enlightened to shine or hover above the world. And there is a mystery in this, because these people do not declare themselves free. They don't claim to have escaped rebirth, their biographies are clues. But the truth of their state is not in their achievements, so let us ask now, what makes this kind of mind possible? We turn next to the symbols, the myths, and the mysteries that attempt to describe the indescribable. The cultural fingerprints of those who lived. Across cultures and centuries, There have always been stories of those who quietly stepped beyond the world's grip. Not with miracles, not with declarations, but with stillness. But those who no longer need to be reborn at all, yet return by choice, out of compassion. This is not poetry, it is a description of release. It means freedom from the tyranny of emotional disturbance. A Stoic sage does not suppress feelings, they simply do not let emotions rule their judgment. They are clear, calm, and consistent regardless of external change. They are still in the storm, but the storm is no longer in them. They dissolve the ego so fully, even history cannot hold them. They are not absent, they are empty, not erased but transparent. A person whose heart is untangled from desire, whose identity is no longer caught in illusion, no longer accumulates the conditions for rebirth. In Zen Buddhism, the final image in the 10 ox-herding pictures, a series illustrating the journey to enlightenment, is not of a sage meditating, but of a smiling man walking into a village, wine jug in hand, mingling with the people. Enlightenment is not escape, it is return, without bondage. A full participation in life, without identification. In the Taklamakan desert of western China, explorers once unearthed the mummified body of a man seated in meditation posture, legs folded, spine upright, hands in dhyana mudra. It is not flashy, it is not dramatic, it is quiet, steady, grounded, and invisible to those who only measure success in noise and applause. Maybe their greatest teaching is not in what they said, but in what they no longer needed to say. Their lesson is their way of being. Radiocarbon dating placed him at over 2,000 years old, but together, they form a subtle map, not toward some faraway heaven but toward the stillness available in this very breath. No one could explain why he was buried in that posture, or what tradition he belonged to. But the image remains, even in death, a posture of calm, a message written in silence. But perhaps their difference was simply this: they stopped identifying with what came and went. They did not resist the world, they did not chase it. They did not fight their pain, nor cling to pleasure. They lived in such a way that rebirth had no more reason to pull them back. They may continue to live for a while, but the cycle is already complete. What they offer is a scent, a stillness, a presence that invites rather than instructs. When you meet someone who lives this way, you feel it before you understand it. Your breath slows, your questions fall away. You find yourself more here, more now. These saints did not seek to perform miracles. They often fled fame, they simply cultivated silence. And in that silence, something immense unfolded. Their actions no longer bind them, they are free. He was a simple lay practitioner. No one knew him well. But after his death, monks discovered journals filled with reflections, some deeply stoic in tone. One line read, "Today, nothing moved me, not because I am strong, but because I saw through the movement. His body was cremated, his name forgotten. But the words remain clear as cold water. They don't return because of karma, but because of love. They are not caught in the wheel, they ride it lightly. And when their task is done, they vanish as quietly as they arrived." These people leave behind few words, few followers, few explanations. Yet somehow, the memory of them lingers, in caves, on scrolls, in silence itself. We feel their presence not in what they said, but in how they lived. In ancient Tibet, there are stories of the Tulku, not merely reincarnated teachers. His name appears only in oral stories. He is said to have sat beneath the same neem tree for 40 years, without students, without sermons. Locals say people who passed by experienced an odd sensation like a weight lifted, or time slowing. He spoke rarely, he ate when food appeared. He never asked for anything. After he died, no relics were kept. But to this day, villagers say, the tree remembers. In Hindu Upanishads, a verse declares, when the knot of the heart is loosened, all doubts are resolved, and all karma ends. In Stoic thought, the same state appears under a different name, apatheia. Often misunderstood, apatheia does not mean indifference. This state is not easy to describe, so cultures encoded it in symbols. A lotus blooming in mud, a flame that does not flicker, a mountain above the clouds. In India, sages are often depicted sitting motionless for decades, not as a sign of escapism, but as a metaphor for out non-reactivity. They are said to have burned their karma, not by action, but by pure awareness. One such figure is Sabai, an obscure, undocumented ascetic from southern India. We cannot verify his life. There are no books, no photos. And that is precisely the point. The truly free leave no trace. Other symbols appear across the world. In Christian mysticism, too, the Desert Father spoke of the death before death, a state of stillness and surrender in which the ego dissolves before the body does. Even in modern times, we find such stories. In the 1950s, a Japanese man named Masao passed away in a Zen monastery. It is tempting to believe that these people were different, special, touched by the divine. This kind of being leaves behind no formulas, no shortcuts. Even archaeology sometimes stumbles into mystery. So many of these lives, these symbols, these mysteries, seem to whisper the same thing, that liberation is not a performance. We often think the wise must speak, but maybe their wisdom is precisely their silence. And so, we are left with these traces, faint, fragmented, often forgotten. A tree, a journal, a posture, a presence. In the next part, we will return to our own time, to city streets, crowded schedules, restless minds, and ask, how can we begin to live, even a little, like those who no longer need to return? In the quiet of morning, before the city stirs, a person sits with their hands resting gently in stillness. They're not seeking to escape the world or become someone else. They simply breathe. In that breath is presence, and in that presence freedom. Yet even in this storm, a person can find stillness not by leaving the world, but by mastering how they meet it. Imagine a mother, tired from work, facing her child's tantrum. This is not a denial of life, it is an invitation to meet life with awareness instead of identity. You are not your titles, not your emotions. You are the calm presence behind them, and when you begin to live from that space, the world no longer pulls at you the same way. You still care, you still act, but the center from which you move is no longer unstable. In that moment, instead of reacting, she breathes, she kneels, she listens. Her silence is not withdrawal, it is strength. They are simple. Each morning, sit for 5 quiet minutes without goal. What would I release? What would I keep? The answer to that question may change your path. In the next breath, you choose to meet without resistance. It means you are no longer reborn every moment in your opinions, your roles, your wounds. This death he spoke of is not physical, it is the daily letting go of what doesn't matter. Ego, control, comparison, that you're not grasping for more, nor running from less. You're simply here, watching, responding, releasing. Not because you've transcended life, but because you've finally learned how to hold it loosely. That is the sign of someone who may never need to return, not because they reject life, but because they've completed it in every breath. Samsara ends not with escape, but with full presence. To practice this is not to become cold, but to become clear. Every moment becomes a chance to say, I choose peace instead of reaction. And when you do this often enough, something quiet shifts. You begin to realize, liberation is not some distant goal. It is a posture of mind, lived in silence, between breaths. You still experience pain, but it does not become your name. You still feel joy, but you no longer try to hold it still. You don't resist life, but you also don't let it define your worth. This is the gentle strength of one who walks lightly, deeply, with nothing left to prove. Let breath be breath. During conflict, wait 3 seconds before responding. Ask, is this clarity or ego? In moments of joy, enjoy fully, without clinging. In sadness, feel it, without sinking. Each night, reflect on what you let go of. These small rituals are not religious, they're reminders. Each one chips away at the illusion that you are what happens to you. a quiet that refuses to perpetuate cycles of reactivity. She is not perfect. She is present. That is enough. Not the kind that needs announcing, but the kind that no longer clings. In that silence, something soft but immense begins to unfold. This is not a scene from a distant monastery. It could be your room, your life. The first step toward inner liberation is always this: attention, without grasping. To live as if you've stepped off the wheel of becoming is not to reject life, but to participate in it without being bound by it. You still go to work, you still care for others, you still face challenge, but you are no longer reacting from fear or habit. Instead, you act from clarity. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life." It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. When we stop chasing control, we start reclaiming the only thing that was ever ours, our mind. In the modern world, distraction is endless. Notifications, comparisons, and news feeds keep us spinning. Samsara moves faster than ever. Freedom begins not in distant rituals, but in small decisions. The pause before reacting, the space between feeling and doing. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." When we grasp this, we start to meet life differently. When someone offends us, we can pause and ask, if I were already free, how would I respond? This is not spiritual performance. It's a way of returning to yourself, over and over, in ordinary moments. The great escape is not from the world, but from ourselves, as we've been conditioned to be. Jnana Yoga in Hindu tradition teaches us to look inward and declare, "I am not the body. I am not the mind. I am that which observes." So, what are the practices of those who live free, even while in the world? Living as if you are already free means doing without needing, giving without expecting, letting go without losing yourself. Seneca once said, "He who dies every day never dies." And perhaps one day, without planning it, you will find that you are no longer reacting the same way. So ask yourself gently, honestly, what would it mean to live today as if I needed nothing from the world but this moment? And it doesn't require anyone's approval. It begins in stillness, in awareness. Thank you for walking this journey with us. See you in the next meditation.